Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I apologize for the delay. I was having some technical difficulties. So finally here, we finally got it all set up. Today and tonight I want to talk about what is guided reading. I am beginning a Facebook Live series called Summertime Sip and Chat, and we will be focusing on all things guided reading. And the reason that I am doing this is to celebrate my latest product, which has been a labor of love, called Mastering Guided Reading, and it is a set of volumes which have differentiated reading lessons for guided reading to make it easy for the teacher to differentiate all their second grade students' needs. So let's do a couple things and get some housekeeping things out of the way first. If you are here with me, thank you so much for joining me. If you'll just let me know in the comments below where you're from, if you have any questions about guided reading, go ahead and put those in the comments and I will either address it tonight or I'll address it in a later Facebook Live because I have an entire series coming up. Also, I will be giving away, because I thought it was the perfect time, I will be giving away a $25 gift card to Amazon tonight because I know that it is Prime Day is coming up. It starts at 9 p.m. tonight. So I thought, what a better way to celebrate my first Facebook Live in the series than to do a gift card, especially for something that's going to apply tonight. So you can hopefully use it to buy something in your classroom or just maybe enjoy your summer or just a treat for you, however you want to use it. So if you would like to enter, it is super simple to enter for that giveaway. All you have to do is leave a comment below and I will randomly select one winner or one name from the comments to be a winner, and I will post that at the end of this live. So after I stop streaming and I end it, I'll go upstairs, select somebody to be a winner, and I'll leave the winner in the comments. So if you're watching this on replay, I may have already selected a winner. I'm sorry. So fingers crossed somebody wins. So good luck. You have some Amazon goodies coming your way, somebody out there. And I also wanted to kind of do some more housekeeping because when I went live last night, I introduced and I went through everything about this program and went through an overview on how it was created and why it was created and what is included. If you were interested in it, you can check out the links above. In the links above, you'll see two. One of these is without word study and the other is with word study centers. It has 6 weeks of word study centers if you would like that. I was going to give away one copy of this, and all you had to do was comment last night. So I need to announce my winner of who won Volume 1 of Mastering Reading. So the winner, and I apologize if I butcher your name, I'm so sorry. I think it's Deldrika Gamble Scott. You are the lucky winner of the Mastering Guided Reading Volume 1, and I will be emailing that to you or probably doing a PM through your personal message, so check your other box. If you did not win and you really would like a copy of this, I went ahead and I extended the sale. Last night I was going to do 15% off the pack, both of the packs, the one with the Word Study Centers and the one without. I did 15% off and it was only going to be last night till midnight. But I realized if people were holding out because they wanted to see if what winner was announced or whatever, I was like, oh, that would be, wouldn't be very fair. So I went ahead and extended it until tonight. So if you were waiting to see who the winner was and you want to go ahead and pick it up, it is in the links above. Make sure if it's a program that you are interested in that you go ahead and download that preview file, because in that preview file there is a huge pack of one entire text with 4 levels, all the lesson plans and activities, so you can check out what the program is all about and test it for yourself. So that is what we're working on for tonight, and I'm going to talk about the concept of what is guided reading anyways. And I was going through some of my old paperwork and some of my old things, and I found a definition of guided reading that I wrote forever ago when I was working on my website. And this is what I wrote. And I'm not sure exactly of the year when I wrote this. It may have been 2009. But I wrote, guided reading is meeting in small, flexible, homogeneous grouping to work on a reading of a text. Students meet in small group, if possible, 6 or less, and tackle a common text. These groups are not static and children move within these groups based on their reading levels or needs. It is important that students are placed in a group where they have the maximum potential for reading success. So that is a lot of gobbledygook. So that's a big old long definition. So let's go ahead and let's break it down and talk about what is guided reading anyway. Now, you'll see I have created a handout to go with this presentation. So if you're interested, if you want to follow along, or if you want to catch up later, I have typed this into a 2-page handout. You'll see in the description box there is a bit.ly link that has the link to these handouts. So what is guided reading anyway? So the idea of guided reading is that it's flexible groups. It is not supposed to be where you have groups set for a year and kids stay in the group, because the idea of guided reading is that kids are growing and changing as readers, and that's what you hope. And kids grow and change and learn at different rates, and so your groups will reflect that. So you should be constantly assessing your kids, constantly listening to them read. That tap-in time. I'm going to do an entire Facebook Live about what you do at that time later in the series. Is a great time to really listen to your kids and make some on-the-spot decisions for their instruction, and as far as grouping right there. But the group shouldn't be static, and that kind of goes along with a long time ago, the red birds, blue birds, and the blackbirds are always the blackbirds in the lowest group forever and ever, and that was just the way it is. That is not what guided reading is all about. Kids are supposed to be able to move according to their needs. In guided reading, one of the other things, a common an idea for guided reading is all the kids are working on the same text. Usually in guided reading, the texts are leveled, and they are leveled at their instructional level, and that is determined by some kind of assessment. Usually like your school district may provide one, for example, a DRA, a Rigby kit. I'm trying to think of some other ones. Fountain Manal does one. There's a ton of different kids. There's an Jerry Johns has one. So you should have some kind of running record kit, which will give you an idea of where the instructional level of the students are. And from that information, that is how you develop your groups. And the kids are in a similar group based on that level. I'm really interested because I've heard a lot of differing things. Do you have in your area, in your district, I'd love to know what state you're in or what area you're in, do you have access to a district-wide or a school-wide running record assessment like I just mentioned? I'd be very curious to see what the consensus is on that, because I assumed it was something that was very common, and I'm starting to learn that not all teachers have access to that. So the other part of guided reading is that it is not a large group. It is not splitting the class in half and doing, 10 to 12 kids. I have found personally, I like to stick to the number 6, and I think 6 is a little on the high side. There are some years where I haven't had many choices, but it is what it is, but I really like to stick to 6 or less, and my perfect number is 5 or below, really. That is my personal benchmark number, because I feel like I can listen to kids, do more with that tap-in time, that time where I'm listening to kids. It doesn't take me as long to get through all my kids, so I can hear them read more frequently, and more kids can contribute to the discussion. Another aspect, and especially when you're moving into 2nd grade to 5th grade, kids should be reading the text silently. That is actually a developmental stage, and they should be learning and practicing the concept of reading in their quote-unquote heads. And it is not a round robin where everybody takes a page and reads it. And I know that some people work on that, where you'll read a page and you'll read a page and you'll read a page, and that is not what guided reading is about. And it's not for a chance for kids to anticipate what they're about to read so that they're prepared to sound good in front of their peers. No, it's about them tackling a text and learning from the text and reading for meaning to be able to discuss it later. Another point is that after it, the teacher is usually going to lead discussion and ask questions and kind of get kids to start talking about the text. So to some degree, it is teacher driven as far as asking questions and guiding students in comprehension. Usually there's also a teaching point that the teacher has selected to discuss and to directly teach something based on a common need in the group, and that's the teaching point. So let's talk about what guided reading is not. So that's all it is. Let's talk about what it's not. And if you have any questions, go ahead and just add them below. It can be about this presentation. It can be about anything in guided reading. It doesn't bother me at all. However, I don't multitask very well, so I will be answering questions at the end. So don't worry if I haven't answered it. I will definitely come back to them at the very end when the last slides is just a question slide. It's just as easier for me to keep my focus. I need my focus. Now, guided reading is not static reaping. I've mentioned that earlier, where it's not where the groups stay the same with the redbird, blackbird, and bluebird. It is not mixed ability. So if you have kids reading on 2 or 3 different levels in the group, that's really, I know that happens sometimes. Let's just say you have like kids that are reading on a J and a K, and it might be easiest to group them together and work on a K just because of that's logistics in the classroom, and that's just life. That's just real world experience. I'm talking about kids working on a J, M and a P all in the same group, because that's not guided reading. Because the idea of guided reading is you're working at your instructional level. Okay, now it shouldn't be large groups of students because, yet again, you want to listen to them, you want to be able to talk to them and hear what they're saying, and also watch and observe them reading. And it's hard to do when you have a large group of kids. And kids can, slip through the cracks. And, the kids that are struggling are really good at avoiding being called out because it's a great coping strategy. I don't blame them at all. It's natural. I know when I was in Spanish, I tried to sit behind the biggest kids so maybe the teacher wouldn't call me. And now I know that never worked. But it's a coping mechanism when you're stressed and something is difficult. Like I said, it is not round robin reading where everybody is taking a turn. There is a place for fluency practice, and that's a lot of the argument I know in round robin reading is that they make an argument that teachers want to hear the kids read and they need to practice their fluency. And there is a different way that is, in my opinion, a better way to listen to the kids read, which is that tap-in time, which will be a later video, and I'll have a schedule so you can see that in just a few slides. And it's for fluency. There's other ways to embed fluency within guided reading that I feel are more effective as well. It is not reading that is too hard for the kids because it is at their instructional level. You shouldn't be selecting a frustrational level text. You're going to get that information from those running record assessments and from listening to the kids and working through a book. You may find that although when you did a running record, the group was ready for an M, let's just say. And so you pulled out an M and it was a nonfiction text all about polar bears, and you realize, you know what, maybe they're an M in fiction, but they're, several kids are really struggling here, so maybe I need to back down because fiction tends to be harder and move down to an L for nonfiction before really moving them up, even though I have a running record that says they're an M, but it was a fictional text. It is not worksheet based. And so I know I did actually some worksheets. I did some graphic organizers and things like that, but it's really not supposed to be all about the process of filling out a worksheet. It's really supposed to be about the active reading. It's about discussing the text, and it's figuring out where your kids are, what they need, and getting them there. And that's not always done with a worksheet. So those are, I will tell you to some degree that some of this is just flat out like what's been published about guided reading. It comes from Mountain Spinell, and some of it is my opinion. So I'm not going to claim that everybody will agree with everything I'm saying. And if you disagree, that's okay. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. That's fine. Everybody's allowed to have their school of thoughts, and there's different methods that work for different teachers. So that's okay too. So let's talk about now. So I've talked about what it's not, and there's a couple buzzwords that you may hear in grouping. And I want to talk about what some things that get mistaken for guided reading, or people assume this is guided reading, and it's really not. And you may say, it's just semantics. Why does it matter? It's just a name, it's just a label. But if you're being expected to do, let's just say, RTI interventions, and your district or your school has these expectations for you, and you're doing guided reading groups instead, you're not following your expectations that you've been given by your administrators or by your superintendent. And that's a problem because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing for your job. And it may just be a simple confusion of what the label goes with what. So let's talk about what kind of group matches what. So if you look here, I've taken a chart, and in the chart it has strategy groups, and it compares it to guided reading. I know Jen Bangle just did a couple of nights ago, and I should have put it in the descriptor. I'm going to come back after I finish this Facebook Live. I'm going to go back and add her Facebook Live. Ironically, she did Facebook Live all about strategy groups, and she did a really great job of explaining strategy groups. The first time I had really heard of strategy groups, I remember it was many years ago. I was reading 4th grade, and it was an upper grades book, and I remember picking out the professional leading text. I'd only been teaching 2 or 3 years, and I remember reading it and just going, whoa, I'm not ready for this kind of thinking. This is too much for me right now. I remember very vividly thinking, I love the idea, I love the concept, but I'm not ready for it as a teacher. I have too much on my plate. This is something I can't tackle right now. And I remember putting the book aside, and I want to say maybe it's Chris Giovanni. I can't remember the text. I may have to go back and look because it's going to drive me crazy until I figure it out. And then several years later, I read the Daily Five and the Cafe books. And that was really where it started to sink in. And it was something that I was professionally ready to tackle. Strategy groups really became popular when the sisters started talking about the Daily Five, and they started talking about their cafe menu. Strategy groups are still small groups. They're still meeting in small groups with your students. The idea for strategy groups is that they're for all the students in your class, but instead of kids being grouped by their instructional levels, they are grouped by what strategies or skills they need. For example, when I taught third grade, I ran guided reading groups, and I was lucky enough to have a co-teacher at that time. So we were able to run 2 guided reading groups simultaneously. So there's more of us to tackle the needs. So we got to the point where we were running, between 4 and 6 guided reading groups a day, which was awesome. We had like 21 kids, so we were hitting all kinds of things. So at one point I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do guided reading for one of these groups. I'm going to do a strategy group, and I'm going to focus explicitly on fluency. And so what we did is we talked about fluency, and I just happened to use running reader theater scripts that I had, and I loved it. So that is the idea of taking a group of students who have a specific need and grouping them together, irregardless or regardless. Which one is it? I know there's one of them. Can't remember now. Of their instructional level. So because of that, when I did it, I just had kids reading the same, because it was a reader's theater, that we had the same script and we practiced it, and it didn't cause an issue. But you can also apply it where kids are working on the same strategy. Like they could be looking at, for example, the skill of cause and effect. And you can have them finding examples of cause and effect within their own text. And each student could have an instructional level text, for example, that they've read in guided reading, but they could all be different because it's all how to find cause and effect, and learning maybe keywords and all that kind of things would be an example of a lesson that you might do in a strategy group or a skill group. And also, this group is not for the long term. This is not a group that you're going to meet with every day, for the year or whatever. You're not always going to have a fluency strategy group, because the idea is a strategy group is put together based on exactly what the kids need. So you may have a strategy group blocked off in your schedule, but maybe one week you'll realize the strategy group needs to focus on, like I said, cause and effect. Another week they really may need to focus on main idea. You may come and realize that, a lot of kids are blowing through periods and they're not using commas, so you may need to go back and do a fluency group. So that is going to be a real flexible on what you're going to be teaching and who is going to be in that group, because it's based on what they need. So you could see in guided reading, the right column is guided reading, and it is going to be the same for each of these slides next, but they're both for all the students. And guided reading, they're done by level. Everybody has the same text. The teacher is going to introduce the text and talk about tricky words, and they can talk about decoding strategies right there. Then the students will each read the text silently while the teacher listens in and taps in and gives immediate feedback, and then there's discussion of the text. So just even how the group is organized is going to be slightly different. Now let's talk about another type of group, which is literature circles. And literature circles are great. And I have actually a pack that I've written specifically for primary grade students on how to do literature circles, because everybody assumes that the only ones that should be doing literature circles are your highest kids, and that's not the case. They're great. Literature circles are for all kids, just like guided reading. And guided reading, everybody is reading the same text. The text is usually student selected in a literature circle. When I did literature circles, I kept selection within teacher choice. So I would choose 4 to 5 books that I felt were most appropriate for the groups or for the kids or for whoever. And then they chose from there. And then I did have the final say in how the groups were made. So if I had 2 kids that behavior-wise, I didn't want them together, it was a bad idea, I could actually, put them in a separate group, even if they said this was a number 1 choice for book. But generally, the text is student selected. In a literature circle, the kids have some kind of job. They read the text by themselves, and then they're going to do some kind of reflection piece or a job or a role sheet with that text, where they're going to go back and they're going to find tricky words, or they're going to create questions, or they're going to visualize what they saw and draw a picture. So it's these different jobs that are specific to the text. Then the students are going to meet. It is usually student directed, although the teacher might need to step in and help and guide them in the beginning. But the students are going to use those role sheets, use those jobs, and use just the procedures that you have set up in your classroom to discuss the text. So it's really more student-led and student-driven versus guided reading, which is going to be more teacher-led, more teacher-driven. So I'm not going to read guided reading again because it's just the same. So let's talk about RTI intervention. And the RTI, I think from what I can tell, it is different from district to district and state to state. I don't know if that's still the case, but that is what I noticed whenever I talked about it. But this is based on my experience in one of the larger districts in Georgia. But I have found that RTI is specifically for, there's the 3 tiers. And when you get to Tier 2, that is when you're starting to work with the smaller groups of students, and then the Tier 3 is going to be one-on-one. That is how we always did it, that I was familiar with. So it's specifically for kids who are below grade level and are not hitting grade level benchmarks. The size of the grouping depends on what tier they're in. So for example, like I was saying, a Tier 3 was, if the kid was at Tier 3, I always met with them one-on-one. If they are in Tier 2, I might pull 2 or 3 to get together. Just like kind of guided reading, it is based on need. So you can base it on instructional level. You can base it on a need of a strategy or a skill. Usually I found it was more often based on like some kind of, like for reading, it would be like decoding, one of the big pillars of reading, decoding, it would be vocabulary comprehension, something there rather than necessarily like main idea, reading nonfiction, fluency, and maintaining like punctuation. It's not saying usually that specific. That was really what your target goal might be. But the big idea is they were missing out something in one of those big ideas, like the decoding, vocabulary, fluency, comprehension. I feel like I'm missing one as I'm talking. And also in RTI, it has extensive documentation, and I'm sure that I don't have to go much deeper into that. I'm sure if anybody is probably a better expert on the documentation than I am, because I know that it's a ton of paperwork to follow each of the children. And then the length of the time that the group has to meet or that you're meeting with the kids depends simply on your school or your state guidelines. I know that we had to have a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks between meetings on RTI before kids that you had to implement these strategies, and I'm not sure if that's statewide. It's just how we had to do it. So it just was a different format. So that is different than guided reading completely. So let's talk about questions. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pull up my Facebook. And I am hoping that right now that you are making sure that you have commented, you left your name, you have left a question about anything I've mentioned, you've left a question about guided reading in general, because that question or that comment is going to enter you in the $25 Amazon gift card, which will be announced. The winner will be announced at the end of this live broadcast. So let's see what we have right now. Okay, so I'm looking, how do you assess your students in your guided reading group? That is a great question, Anna. She just asked that. When I talk about that tap-in time, which is going to be, let me see, I'm going to switch slides. When I talk about the tap-in time, which is going to be July 19th, I'm going to discuss about that's usually about how I do my assessing. I will also sometimes at the end of a guided reading group, you can also hold one kid back and you can do a running record. I also was in a unique position that I chose not to do guided reading on Fridays. I did it Monday through Thursdays, and I used Fridays as my time to do. I had a lot of kids on RTI. I had like 13, I think. I can't remember. It was a huge chunk of children that were on RTI. So I chose to say Friday to meet with my RTI groups and to collect data and all that kind of stuff. So that would be also a time when I would be doing writing records and such. So you could fit it in the best for your own classroom and for what you and your kids need. Let's see. I love the fact that you say every child should be in a literature circle. Thank you. I feel bad because I feel like that's something that people say only your high kids should be a part of, but it makes me sad because I feel like kids are missing out on rich discussions. And even you can even do reading partnerships where they were just betting it up and talking about it. Beth Newingham, I don't even know if she still has it. She used to be a teacher in Michigan for 3rd grade. She had tons of free resources for reading partnerships that were incredible. And they could work for some of your lower kids too, because they could be doing a reading partnership that lasts one day on the book No David, but still talking about what made them laugh in the book, what it's funny, and what does it mean when the person is saying no David each time, because each is for a different reason and a different tone. And that's a super simple book that even my kindergartner could read. How often do I do running records from Judy? I was required to do a formal running record assessment beginning, mid, and end point of the year, it was required for data to be turned in from my school. I did a running record on each student every time I tapped in on them. That was usually about 100 words, and I used that to gauge if the text was appropriate. So I did at least one short, and I don't have my forms or anything right now because I'm not ready for it because it's next week, and I'm thinking today. But I would just literally take a short running record based on what I heard them read in their book that they were working on right now. So I guess you could say I took small snippets of running records in guided reading every day. Usually I tapped in about 2 kids per time. What do kids, this is a good one. What do kids bring to guided reading groups? Chris Eller. That is a fantastic question that I'm not going to answer because that would be a great just Facebook Live all by itself about materials that kids bring, the teachers need, everything. So I'm going to hold on to your question because that's fabulous. I'm so glad, Lynn, that you're going to think about doing the literature circles. And if you want, I can do a giveaway. When am I meeting next? On Wednesday. If you wanted me to give away a copy of the literature circles, I'd be happy to do that. And we can do it the same as we do with the Amazon gift card. Let's see. Any other questions? It's showing me just like part of the questions. It's not showing me all of them. So I'm going to click on it right now, and I hope I don't hear myself talking because that's going to be really awkward. How do I turn off the sound? Oh, I don't think you can. Okay, good. Do the kids take home the books to practice? Yes, I had kids take home the books to practice, but I did not do that immediately. I actually had kids, and this will go in what guided reading looks like, which is actually going to be my next session, which is on Wednesday at 8 p.m. I hope you tune in so that you can hear more about guided reading. Eventually, they could take the books home, but they didn't take it right after they read. You think I would, but I didn't do it, and I'll explain why. And one of the things that I really, really wanted to try to keep when I wrote the Master in Guided Reading Volume 1 program, I wrote the books to go with it, and I wrote it so that it was just one page front and back, and I did that to save on your copy counts, so that was easy. But I also wanted it so that you could send home books for your parents to work on with their kids, and you didn't have the stress of making sure they came back, because I don't know about you, I always worried about those books coming back. I did it, and I just really hoped everybody brought them back. No, they didn't. I just flipped it back in the book room and hoped no one noticed, which is like terrible looking back. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. But I wanted my kids to be reading, and I didn't have any resources to do it with, so that's what I did. Let's see. Will this be available to watch? Yes. If you would like to, it moved. My guide, Amy said she's had a rough time with guided reading. I'm so sorry, Amy. It will be available. It'll be up on my Facebook page. If you click on videos, it'll pop in with all my videos will pop up for guided reading, so you can always go back and do a refresh. How many guided reading groups do you have, and do you meet with each group each day? This is from Kristen. This is actually going to be something that I will be addressing in my very last Facebook Live, which I think is like the 26th, and it's making the puzzle fit. So I'm going to come back to that question, Kristen. I'm not ignoring it. I've got it scheduled. For upper elementary, this is from Heather White. Is it acceptable to start a book or pick passages from a current novel? No. This is something, and this is an opinion, and I will tell you that it is something I feel strongly about, and I understand why people do it. So she's saying if I have a novel and I want my kids to be reading a novel, can I just pick the passage or just pick part of the novel and have kids read it with me in group and then send them off on their own? That is more like a literature circle, because the idea of guided reading is the kids are reading instructional level text and then working through the text with you to understand it and be able to decode it, right? So if you are doing that with the novel, but you're sending them off to read it on their own, is that an instructional level piece of text? Probably not, because they shouldn't be able to really read it successfully with a good amount of comprehension, so you discuss it later. And I want to say that Jan Richardson, I remember I wrote a blog post about this, and I think Jan Richardson actually wrote something in her, I think, is it the next step in guided reading or steps? She's got 2. It's the first guided reading book that she wrote, that she also agrees that maybe novels are not the best use of your time in guided reading, just because they're so long, they're so clunky, and if you're sending kids to read them off on their own, they're really not an instructional level text. If you're not able, if you don't have the resources though, and it's just a matter of maybe all that you have are novels because your school is a novel-based school, and that happens. I think passages would be fine for guided reading. There's tons of level passages. I have them. A million other TPT sellers have them. There's free ones on readworks.com. Readworks readworks.org maybe, that you could use. And that would be a short piece of text that you can find that's on their instructional level that you can work through together, that they're not expected to have to go tackle on their own. So that's a personal opinion. So we'll see. What do you use for running records? I'm going to answer that in my next one of what it looks like. So I haven't forgotten them. Do you have resources for first grade, Heather S? I have some resources for first grade. I have some emergent readers that I wrote. They're available in my TPT store, and they are word family based books. I don't tend to write too many first grade texts because I haven't taught first grade, or I mean too many first grade materials because I haven't taught first grade. I will write some end first grade text because I have taught in first grade readers, but I've never taught first grade, so I don't tend to write resources that are specifically for first grade as a whole. Let's see. I'm reading my questions, I'm sorry. Oh, Judy, you do the same thing. Judy said she also uses Fridays for assessment. Is it just still a way to catch up? The tap-in time, I'm going to go in specific. It is Ashley Burr is asking about it, and what does it look like? It will be a specific Facebook Live that I will be doing in the schedule, and you'll see it in just a minute. What were the big pillars you mentioned? I usually group based on level. If you are doing like strategy or skill groups, oh gosh, you had to call it the National Reading Panel published in like 2000 something, some of the big ones, and I want to say it's fluency, decoding, vocabulary, comprehension, and I'm missing one. Maybe phonics, phonemic awareness. Maybe that was it. I'd have to go back and look and see what the panel said. I can't call it off the top of my head, although I should be able to. Let's see. Anything else? Regardless, Allison tells me regardless, thank you, is the right way to say it. Jen Mangle does write, she does write stories in her intervention packs. I don't think her and I haven't looked at it too much because I try not to look at it as a seller to seller because she's also my friend. I don't know if hers are based on actual like level or if it's a range of levels because I haven't looked at it that closely. She is a fantastic resource and she's a fantastic writer, so she might be someone you want to look at as well. Let's see. About how long do you spend per group when using your resources? I did a pilot with it, and if you want to look at the Facebook Live from last time, it talks about the different, the case study that I did, and usually the people that ran word study took 20-25 minutes. If you don't use word study, it's about 15 minutes in order to complete the materials in the lesson that I have published in the Mastering Guided Reading. And I think that is all the questions right now that I see. It may have not popped up because there is a delay. So I will answer them maybe when I get back and get settled and come back to it. I want to show you guys the schedule so you can see what's coming up next. I hope you join me this Wednesday. And for this Wednesday, I'm going to be breaking down what does a guided reading lesson look like? What should the flow of guided reading be? And it's going to be really aimed at grades 2 through 5 because kindergarten and first have different needs because there is so much decoding that they're working on in those lower grades that it's not quite, well, I hope it's not quite the same for the upper grades. So I'm going to share with you how I did guided reading. I did it in second grades, third grades, and fourth grade. I assume it will apply to fifth grade, although I will say I have not taught fifth grade, but I would assume the structure would apply. So I hope you will join me here at 8 p.m. on Wednesday. Hopefully we won't have technical issues, so I could just hop right on. And I hope to see you there. I'm going to turn this off and go upstairs, and I am going to pick that winner in just a minute for the $25 Amazon gift card. So if you have not commented, I hope that you leave a comment so that you can be entered. I hope you have a fantastic night, and I will see you on Wednesday.